From the 22 News Plus studio, this is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this edition of InFocus. I'm your host, Patrick Berry. If you are thinking about selling your house this year, or your condo, your farm, whatever it might be, or you're thinking about buying one this year, I am very fortunate today to be joined across the desk by Heather Witalisz. She's a realtor and managing partner with Witalisz and Associates Real Estate in Westfield, and she and I are going to talk about the real estate market. Here we are. It's still early 2026.
It's still early 2026.
So we'll kind of review last year,
Let's
25.
talk about 2025.
But also, and some predictions for this coming year,
Yep.
but also the real estate world, correct me if I'm wrong,
Yep.
has really changed dramatically. It's the PC days versus the PC pre-COVID
Yep.
versus PC post-COVID, I guess.
Yes.
I guess you could use PC for both.
Yes.
Not politically correct.
Yes.
Post-COVID.
Either of.
So am I right with that pre-COVID versus post-COVID, two really different worlds?
So pre-COVID, post-COVID, I would use pre-COVID in terms of 2019 because the chief economist for the National Association of Realtors is saying that 2025, 26 is now going to kind of shift back to the, call it pre-COVID, but I think the market was starting to change even before COVID hit.
Oh, really?
So I think COVID was sort of an implication on how we were managing showing houses 6 feet apart, how the market was doing in terms of things not being available. That being said, in 2021, remember the interest rates were at an all-time low. So
Yes,
that is sort of the,
I
call it
capitalized on that.
we all did, refinance, even on purchases. So what the economists are using the word now for that time frame is sort of the artificial. We're seeing now home sellers starting to chase the numbers, and the frenzied market is no longer there.
It's funny you use the phrase artificial because in the last 5+ years, you know, I've talked to friends and family about real estate, and I said, you got to remember. And I joked, I capitalized on that 2% interest rate. I refinanced. A lot of people did. But that was such a crazy outlier that I look at where we stand today, where interest rates are somewhere between 6 and 8%.
Yep.
That is what I would call normal.
So, but a lot of people think about it that are just coming into the market in that post-COVID or around COVID time with those ridiculous, or those were the rates back then.
Right.
But even everyone that's in real estate at the most highest, level, that I think sellers are trying to chase those numbers, or buyers are trying to chase that. And what's happening now is time is costing them money. So on the good front, though, just to kind of jump to 2026, is the interest rates this past year in 2025 hit 7%. So that's a scary number. And it's a scary number for home sellers that maybe their home's not fitting their needs right now and they do want to downsize. But that 7 number to give up the 3% is a little scary, and the numbers don't work. That being said, now we're starting to see 5.99, and everyone's saying if we can just eke under that 6% mark, you're going to start to see the inventory loosen up a little bit, and we're already starting to see that happen.
And you'll see a lot more activity.
A lot more activity, a lot more choices for home buyers. The good news for sellers, though, is their equity is still increasing year over year.
Right.
So what we're starting to see on the seller's side is if they do choose to stay, and home improvements are costly, as I know, as I'm dealing with a home ice dam right now. But anyway, they're starting to take home equity lines of credit out on their house. So when they bought their house, it was here. Now it's here. They've got a tremendous amount of equity, and now they're making the home work for them.
Right. Is real estate still a good investment?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Think about investment of time, money, and then also where your opportunity cost of where else you're putting your money. And the reason why I say that is because rental rates are increasing so high.
Right.
So now you're looking at, if I'm paying $1,800 to $1,900 a month, which is
on
rent for a 2-bedroom,
which is astronomical,
which is a lot of money, especially when you've got car insurance, car payments, and
utilities,
and your income isn't increasing at the rate that the cost of housing is going up. So is housing affordable? Maybe not too much. That being said, for a first-time home buyer that's just graduating from college, however, if they can get some help from mom and dad, or if they can get into a mortgage program, which there are now plenty of.
There are a lot of mortgage options.
There's so
College
many
grad,
options.
military, veteran,
And you really need to
emergency service worker.
you need to do your research. Even on the conventional side, there's down payment assistance. So there's so many
And the
different.
20% down payment is
You don't need
gone.
20% down.
Right.
You can put down 5%, 3.5% on an FHA, 3% on a mass housing. So it really depends on your debt to income ratios. It depends on your credit scores. It depends on your, they do a verification of employment.
Are these conversations a potential buyer has with their realtor or with their mortgage broker, or both?
Both.
Okay.
So for us, we usually work with, past customers and clients, and we do sort of a consultation for a good hour. And we kind of go over the whole process of home buying from A to Z. That being said, if I were to give, and I'm jumping ahead, but to give any advice to a home buyer, you need some sort of fiscal number. You need to know what your number is. So although we watch HGTV and we want that waterfront, oceanfront home, which I love, you really need to know, like, what can you afford on a monthly basis? And then also cash out of pocket,
which is
a lot.
What you can afford on a monthly basis is a lot different than what you're approved for.
Correct.
Which that's where I think where a lot of people get themselves underwater.
Correct.
Is, hey, I just got approved. I make $60,000 a year, but I'm approved for a $600,000 home. Let's do it.
And if you look at the lending back in 2007, when we got into that a little bit of hot water there. So, and when I say we, the lending, right. Yeah. So I think working with, local mortgage lenders that do it all the time, they can sit down and say, okay, Patrick, what do you feel comfortable with on your monthly payment? Here's what you can afford, but also this is maybe where we need to stay in. And then the realtor needs to help match what you can afford with what you're looking for. Okay. So sometimes, buyers need to adjust their realistic expectations. Exactly. Yes.
We are up on our first commercial break. Stay with us. We got plenty more to talk about in today's real estate world. We're back in a moment.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry. This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Welcome back, everyone. Today in this 22 News Plus studio, sitting across the desk from me is Heather Witalisz. We are talking about real estate, recapping the last couple of years and looking forward to what 2026 has in store for us all.
Yes.
What was the inventory, like buying, selling process like in 2025?
So it was not zero like it was in 2023 and 2024. I would say it was modest.
Okay.
I think what we're very positively looking for is in 2026, you're going to start to see the inventory loosen up a little bit.
Okay.
So when people ask how's the market and we say steady or stagnant or unchanged, inventory just means that there's currently houses available for sale. So what we're looking for in this new year is that there will be more houses coming up for sale. But we're looking at trends in terms of possibly going backwards in terms of the real estate inventory, which isn't a bad thing.
Okay. I want to pull up this first slide of data points. So this is national inventory going back to 2019 through the end of 2025.
Correct.
And again, this is inventory and
houses available for sale. Yeah.
Okay. So 2021, really,
So this is a great slide because what it's showing you is, to your point earlier about COVID, is sort of that COVID of 2020 to 2021. Those were like, that's when you had the multiple offers. That's when you had the 17 bidding wars, that hot market, because it was a supply and demand issue. So there was high demand, low supply. What you're seeing now is gradually over time. And again, these are national numbers. So in terms of inventory in Hampden County,
right.
It's following similar trends. But now we've hit 1.36 million in 2025, and that's going to continue, predicted to grow in 2026. So you're seeing it swing back to that 2019 pre-COVID numbers.
Okay.
Yep.
Right. So, but to your point, here in Hampden County, those they're not those numbers, but it's
Of
the
course.
same cycle.
Same cycle.
The dip in 2020, 2021, and then the return to peaker
And
levels.
remember when it went down to 2020, 21, that's where combined with limited inventory and 3% interest rates.
Exactly.
So that's what was making people really trying to get those houses.
But the problem was, like my house, I look back, my house was ridiculously overpriced. Not that I was selling, and I was like, oh, wow, we may never get that again. But then conversely, where are we going? We're going to overpay for something else.
Which is the $1 million question. Right. And so that is also why people aren't putting their houses up for sale, even though they might be ready for a downsize or a change. They don't want to give up the 3%. And also now the housing prices over time have increased. So now they're basically just buying their current house back at an escalated price.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
all right, let's switch now into, I gotta switch gears over here. Pull up another slide. Now we're talking mortgage rates.
Okay.
So again, I look at this slide.
This proves your point.
Right. So the COVID years, ridiculously low, the outlier, not normal at all. But what's interesting though is if you look at these numbers, basically from 2010 to 2020, on the downturn, they were constantly going down, and then coming out of COVID, they shot up to what I would call normal.
Yeah. And so I remember when coming into the real estate industry and 6% was low.
Right.
So that was sort of like an advantage. Then we hit the 3s. Now fortunately, we hit up to 7, I believe, this year. And, depending on the week or whatnot over the 52-week cycle. But like I mentioned, that sub 6% mark is where the market's going to start to shift a little bit. And it's going to loosen.
The sweet spot.
That's the sweet spot.
Okay.
So we've seen 585, 599. Remember, too, when you're working with a local lender, you can buy down a point. So depending on what your portfolio is, what your goals are, you don't need to succumb to that 6%. There are ways to buy down the point to bring it down over a 30-year.
I look back, the first house I ever purchased was the year 2000. I think we were at 9.5.
Okay.
So, and there's a rule of thumb, Heather, you want to refinance when your interest rate drops
one percentage point.
1 percentage point.
Yes.
Okay. So
however, what I would suggest is you really need to do the numbers and do the math, because there's closing costs, which a lot of people don't. So when we talk about home purchasing and you're talking about a down payment of 3 to 5% or whatever that is, you're also talking about that number that no one talks about, which is cash to come to the closing table of closing costs. So for example, I did a little math here. On a $330,000 house, let's say you put 5% down, that's $16,500 in cash. You've got your principal, interest, taxes, and homeowners insurance, but your closing costs are going to be another $7,500 to maybe $9,000. Wow. So you're talking about almost $25,000 in cash between your down payment and your closing costs. So you really need to, even on a refinance, look at the numbers and make sure that those numbers work.
Right. So ideally 1 percentage point reduction, but that's a bare minimum. You want 1.5.
Right. And the reason why people were doing it at 3% is because they were going from 6 to 3.
That's what I did.
Right?
I think I was at 6.25. I went to 2 1/3 or something.
And
like
what was
that.
also happening when you did that, from 9 to 3 or whatever, your housing price, the value of your home went up. Right. So there was a bigger bandwidth, a bigger variance between,
Right. So going back to, all right. So the next slide here is, and this is data through the end of November.
Yes.
The most recent data that we had to create this.
Correct. So now what we're seeing in 2026 is now that 5.99, 6%, 6.18%. Again, depending on the week, depending on whatnot. What they are saying, however, the economists are saying in 2026, you're going to see it's hover around 6%. We're not going to be doing double-digit declines. However, it is going to start to move a little bit to make it more attractive for home buyers to kind of get their foot into the market.
I know for me, there's a website, amortization calculator.
An amortization schedule.
Right. So, and I mention that because as we look at these rates here, the difference between 2024 and 2025, 6.8 to 6.23. The difference in out-of-pocket cash on a monthly basis might be $10.
Which is, I'm so glad that, so you're getting the math of it. So let's say, for example, you're wanting to buy a house for $350 and we've been looking and we can't find anything. And now your lender says, okay, Patrick, you're approved for up to $375. And we go up maybe $10,000. When you look at the numbers, if we're staying in the same town, because now taxes when you
Right.
jump to a different town, but it really isn't a significant increase. However, when you start to do 50,000 or 100,000, that's when you're starting to see a bigger dip in the monthly payments.
Right.
But why buyers are having, so the profile of buyer right now is 40 years old. It used to be 32, and it used to be even younger in previous years. So we're seeing a big skew on home buyers trying to get into the market that are a more mature buyer because
Right.
of their salary stabilization.
Well, it's funny because in the year 2000, what the heck was I? God, I'm trying to do the math here. 28? Yeah, so I was 28 years old when I bought my first house.
Right.
My oldest daughter's 28. There's no way. My youngest daughter's 26. They're both looking at me like, how the heck did you afford a house at this age?
Of course, and you can appreciate where they're coming from. Right. And also, the home prices have escalated.
Mm-hmm.
Their salaries aren't matching. Costs have increased. Even homeowners insurance has increased. Taxes have been increased. So, however, that being said, if you think about why people are buying, it's, maybe their family dynamics are changing. Maybe they need to get closer to a job. Maybe there was a marriage, a divorce, taking care of mom and dad. We're seeing multi-generational housing going on. So
I've got an 89-year-old mother.
Right, exactly. So we're seeing a lot of, aging parents coming back to live with their adult children. So
we are up on our second commercial break. Plenty more to talk about, so please stay with us. We're back in just a moment.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry. This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to this edition of InFocus. I'm your host, Patrick Berry. Today, we're talking about the real estate market. I'm excited today to be joined across the desk by Heather Witalisz. She is the managing partner and a realtor with Witalisz and Associates out of Westfield. Heather, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
I love having these conversations with you because they're so important no matter what your age is, whether you're in retirement, nearing retirement, you're a youngster trying to buy a house. And no matter what age group you are,
Correct.
There are certain things,
fundamental principles.
Exactly. Whether you're when you're both buying and when you're selling. So we're in the age group where if we're doing something, we're both buying and selling.
Correct.
So let's start with, for those people who are buying, no matter what age group, what are some of the things we should probably be thinking about?
So number one, and full disclosure, I'm biased. So I definitely think that you need to align yourself with a good realtor that knows the local real estate market. So in terms of, Denver or other cities and towns, there are experts that know how to navigate the local market and they know the values. So versus someone coming in from out of town that may not know the area. That's number one. Number two, they could also help guide you throughout the whole process. This is not HGTV. This is not you go out to lunch with your friends and pick out a house, over a cup of coffee.
Right.
So number two is you need to know your numbers. And I know I've kind of kept talking about this and the interest rates. A lot of that is relevant, but you really need to understand not just what your monthly payments are, but your down payment, your closing costs, what private mortgage insurance is if you're putting less than 20% down. So there's a lot of fees and things that are out there that you need to be mindful of instead of trying to do the midnight calculator on your computer. Then I would say you need to determine what your wants versus needs are. So a lot of people will come and say, hey, I'm looking for a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath, fenced in yard for my dog, and it needs to be within a 5-mile radius of my job. That is perfect, but the cost of what you can afford may not align with that local housing inventory. So
you might have to drive 10 miles to work.
You might need to drive 10 miles. You might need to drive 20 miles, but you can get everything that you're looking for at that price point, and you need to go to this city versus this city. So I think a lot of it depends on whether schools are important, whether proximity to family and friends.
And then get your credit score in order.
You need to get a very good credit score, and that's why working with a lender can help you. We've worked with several lenders who can kind of do some research and give you some tips as to what credit card to pay off and what not.
Okay.
And then lastly, I would just say during that home inspection phase, that's where it's super important to work with a realtor to make sure not just the home that you buy and you get that offer accepted, but now let's talk about the roof, the plumbing, the heat, the cooling.
Right. Make sure you're not, getting into some huge expenses.
Or just go in with your eyes open, so.
All right, we've got about 2 or so minutes left.
Okay.
Now I'm selling. What do you
selling?
got for me?
Okay, price. Make sure that you're priced correctly. We are not in that artificial market of 2020, 2021. Make sure that your professional photos are on point because everyone starts their research online.
Everything's online.
Everything is online. Make sure you declutter. You are moving. You need to start packing those boxes and getting rid of all of those personal items.
It's funny. Let me interrupt you there. It's funny because decluttering, as a seller, an expense you may have to incur is a storage unit.
Or using your garage or your basement, because those aren't really, your garage could be, or just getting a pod.
Right.
So getting all of that stuff out, because think about it, a buyer is going to want to envision where their couch is going to go, which is fine, but they also don't want it so cluttered.
They don't need to see pictures of grandma.
Exactly. Or just to depersonalize it. That doesn't mean you need to paint every room. It just means the most important thing is starting to pack all of your items. Also repairing any little fixes that you can kind of get ahead of and being proactive. And then also just making sure that you don't go overboard and over improve the house. And now you have sunk cost and your house is now, you've eaten a little bit of that equity.
One of the jokes I always say with my wife, it's nothing major around our house. Maybe it might be, a rug in the girls' room or something like that.
Yep.
She'll say, oh, if we're ever going to sell this house, we're going to have to replace that rug. I'm like, that's the next buyer's problem or next owner's problem.
So think about it.
So is it worthwhile to spend? I don't even know what a new rug is for a bedroom.
I think it
$1,000?
depends. Is the rug disgusting? And is it just maybe needs to be cleaned?
Right.
I think a lot of times what we're seeing is, again, because of what we see on television in the entertainment industry, it's more like fix those leaky pipes, have your HVAC furnace serviced before you do it. And then I would say there's different levels of just get it cleaned, deep clean.
Does it make sense? Like if I'm thinking, so here we are at the start of 2026, if I'm thinking of selling maybe in 2027 or even later this year, bring in a home inspector, maybe incur that cost now and just say, okay, go through it. What am I in for?
Yes. And here's the reason. You want to kind of get ahead of it. It's like sort of an audit of your home, right? So they're going to kind of tell you, now you can do a couple different things. Fix those things now, because once you go under contract with a buyer, those things have not just a $20 GFI, it's now $1,000, wall sconce fix. So I think that's a great way to save money by being proactive. And then also just if you're not going to fix it, you obviously know that you need to disclose those things on your home. So
perfect. Heather Witalisz, always fun having you
here.
Thank you for great conversation.
Me. I know I could spend all day here with you.
You and me both. It's such a fun conversation. Folks, thank you for watching. Great tips if you're interested in buying and selling a home this year. Good seeing you.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.